for a single word, the story of an old peasant, innocence, and injustice. Leo Tolstoy. I happened to be drinking tea this winter in a cookshop where I am known. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and being a regular customer, a newspaper was as usual handed to me as a special mark of respect. Having put on the spectacles my old eyes require, I dived into the paper and became absorbed in an article about Leo Tolstoy. It was quiet in the place. There were few customers, and I gave myself up entirely to the reading. My reading was interrupted by an old man in a peasant's coat, wearing bark shoes, and with a small bag on his arm, who came up and softly touched my shoulder, saying, "Won't you give me a kopeck? I'm hungry." I was vexed at the fellow's impertinence in disturbing me. I considered myself poor, almost a beggar, though I did not go begging, and in my vexation, without looking up from the paper, I said, "There are plenty of you hungry ones loafing about. I am hungry myself. Go to the devil." And having said this, I went on reading. But my reading was interrupted by a strange sound of convulsive weeping and sobbing. I took off my spectacles, laid them on the newspaper, and looked at the beggar. He was an old man, evidently a peasant, pale, thin, and with a bent back. He stood without moving, and his sunken chest heaved again and again with sobs. I suddenly felt pained and ashamed. A lump rose in my throat, and I could hardly keep from tears. We old folk have a weakness that way. Feeling ashamed, I tried in my mind to accuse myself for not having given him anything, and for having even told him to go to the devil. I am hungry myself, out of work, and have a large family on my hands, thought I. But immediately the voice of conscience began to speak in my soul. "Still, you should not treat him like that. It was wrong. You have done wrong, brother Vasily," said I to myself. I did not know what it was that made him weep so, the want of bread, or my rude refusal. In the 60 years of my life, I have seen but little Joby, and since I can remember, I have myself experienced the harshness of men, and heard from them just such words as I had said to the old man. But yet, I felt pained and ashamed. I sat, he stood before me, and for a minute we looked at each other in silence. It was long before I could find words to say to him. Out at last, mastering my confusion, in a voice just as unsteady and timid as that in which he had asked me for a kopeck a minute before, I said, "What are you crying about, friend? It won't help matters. One has to bear things." "It is hard to bear. I tried to find a job. No, begging I'm not used to, and no one gives, there now, since they let me out of prison. Will you believe it, Daddy? It's the third day, and I've not had a pound of bread to eat. I'm that hungry." He again sniffed, and tears again came into his eyes. I felt uncomfortable, but as it seemed to me that this man, let out from prison, was not in such despair merely for want of bread, but had something more important on his mind, I tried to get into conversation with him, in order, if possible, to comfort him. "Terrace won't do much good," I said. "They'll only upset you still more. There, sit down by me here and let's have a talk. Tell me all about it plainly." The old man sat down by me and placed his bag on his knees, and I began to question him. "Where are you from?" "I? I am from the Kursk government, Oboyansk district, Rybatsk parish, Bobrovka village." "How did you get here?" "How did I get here? I was sent here as an exile." "What was that for?" "Why exiled? Why for one single word?" "What word was that, my good fellow?" He faltered, as if afraid to tell me what word it was he suffered for. Though I am myself a peasant, I was dressed in town clothes. I wore a pea-jacket and strong boots and galoshes, and a newspaper and spectacles were lying in front of me. He noted all this searchingly and suspiciously, and remained silent, probably suspecting me of some evil intention. He's not asking without a reason why, and what for, and where from, thought he. So he remained silent, probably considering that better is good silence than a blundering word. I understood that it was hard for him to say the word for which he was suffering, to a strange townsman who might prove to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. And having understood this, I no longer tried to draw him out, though I much wanted to know how such a man could have been arrested and exiled, as he evidently had been, for political reasons. I have known many politicals, and have even lived in the same lodging with some of them. They were mostly young, advanced, self-confident, and eloquent men. How could this pitiful old man, so totally unlike them, have become a political? "Look here," I said. "You go into that little room over there and wait about half an hour. When the izvostchiks, cabmen, come in, I'll see what we can get together for you. Now go and order some soup and as much bread as you can eat." "But how? I've no money. There now? There now, order it and eat it, and we'll pay the money." The old man went. I remained alone again, put on my spectacles, and set to work to finish the article. But again my reading was interrupted, this time by a waiter. "Vasily Stepanovich, did you order soup and bread for that old man?" "Will you pay the 12 kopecks, 3 pence?" "Yes." Half an hour later, all the tables were occupied by izvostchiks who had come for tea and supper after seeing a train off. The place, which had been quiet till then, became noisy with their talk. One was telling about a gendarme, another about a passenger, a third was complaining of the badness of the roads. One story was interrupted by another, with the addition of abuse and jokes. I sat biding my time before appealing to my comrades. I myself was for many years an izvostchik, and I knew them all, and they all knew me. At the end of half an hour, the talk began to quiet down. All were busy eating, drinking tea, or sitting over their bottle. It was long before I could make up my mind to begin. At last I plucked up courage and spoke to one more likely to help than the others in a matter of that kind. He was generally known as Alioha. Out on so solemn an occasion, I address him as Alexei Titik. I told him all about the affair, and proposed that together we should persuade our comrades to pity the poor man, a brother peasant, suffering, as he said, for one word, and should ask them to help him. I called the old man out of the dark little room. The izvostchiks did not ask him, who, where from, what for? But as if at the word of command, they all, one after another, pulled out their purses, and help, in the form of copper coins, poured from all sides into the old man's hand. "Don't take it ill, old man. Nowadays one can perish for nothing at all," said the givers as they handed the money. The old man was deeply moved and could hardly bow to them often enough. The business was done. The old man's hand was full of coppers. I now no longer feared to frighten him by my curiosity, so I aced him to speak out and tell me how it all came about. I told him to sit by me, and when he had done so, I said, "What was the word for which you were exiled to this place, my dear fellow?" His former timidity had vanished. He cast a look round on those who had helped him, as if inviting them too to listen, and he began his tale. "It's hard, friend. Ah, how hard! Will you believe it? God only knows. He is my witness that I speak the truth. I am suffering for one single word. This is how it happened. There was a pogrom in our province in Kursk. I dare say you've heard of it." "Yes, of course," said several voices. "It was in the papers." "Well, there? Yes, yes. It may have been also in the papers, but the rumour spread everywhere. Well, you see, our peasants began to plunder the gentry, rob them of everything, and in some places fired their houses." "Well, and you mean you took part in it too, Daddy?" asked Alioha. "Who? I—" "That's just it, that I did not. I was exiled for a word, just for one word. I was driving one day from our town, from Oboyan, and some of our squire's farm labourers were driving the same way. One word led to another. Chatter, chatter, babble. We grew talkative. They know me. I know them. That was fine, Mikisha, the way your Oboyan people cleared our squire out of their parts. They should clear him out of this farm now. Burn it too." And I only said, "Our Oboyanites have cleared your squire out of their parts, and you can burn your farm yourselves if you wish to." And there my talk with them ended. After that, we said goodbye, and they went their way, and I went mine. I had forgotten all about it, and was living quietly at home. A week passed. It was evening. I had climbed onto the stove and laid down, and just as I was falling asleep, someone knocked at the window. "Oh, bother you!" And I even gave a jump. My eldest daughter went to open the door. I raised my head and listened. What silly fellow is there? I heard someone asking for me. He gives my name and surname. My daughter says, "He's at home, lying on the oven." I couldn't make out whose voice it was, but I saw a policeman pushing his way into the hut. "Where is he?" says he, naming me. I was quite stunned. I think, what can he want me for? But as to my talk with the labourers, it never entered my head. "Come, get down, dress quick, look alive, march, to the officer at the police station." I tried to find out what for, but he was a close-tongued hound. He even stamped his foot and shouted, "No arguing, look alive." I hurriedly put on this coat and did not even take my warm mittens. We came out and started off. He got on his horse and drove me along. My little ones were quite frightened. I have 5 children, the eldest, a girl of 17, and a boy of 12 who is now left head of the house. The others are all younger and younger. They followed me through the village, screaming and crying with all their might. The old man gasped for breath. His chest heaved, his shoulders jerked, his face was awry, and he covered his eyes with his hand. Oh, how hard it was to part, brothers. There now, my eldest daughter. May God not let her out of his keeping, and my little son. What is her but a little nestling? And here am I, far out of sight of all 5 of them. You see, I have hardly an ounce of strength left, and to have still to suffer so much. Oh, Lord, it seems I could drag through a lifetime quicker than through this 1 year. But how did it all come about? This is how it came about, as I was told. The choir's labourers went home and went and told the steward, "We've been driving with Mikishka, and he was telling us how their Oboyanites cleared out the squire's seat in their parts. Now," he said, "it's your turn to clear out the choir's farm." The steward told the squire, and our squire's a retired lieutenant colonel. He wrote a paper to the governor. "There," says he, "the peasant Mikishka is telling my labourers to burn my farm, but never had I such a thaw in my head. Where did they take me? Why, first the policeman drove me to the officer at the police station. It was late. They put me into the guardhouse and did not examine me that evening. The night, lads, seemed like a week to me. I never closed my eyes. Ah, well, thought I, the officer won't keep me long. He'll ask me something and send me home. I'll have my sleep out at home." Then I saw the dawn breaking. It was morning. I waited, and it seemed so long. Still, they did not call me. It was as if my soul would jump out of my body. My heart went pit-a-pat. Oh, think I, it's no good that is coming. Then I heard a knocking on my cell. Well, think I, now Jesus help Mikishka. The lock clicked. The door opened. They took me to the officer. He looks at me, shakes his head and says, "Anyway, my man, it's a nicer road you've started on in your old age. You should guide the young ones, but you yourself have taken to, how did he call it? Pan. Is it? No, I can't say it. Taken to propaganda? Someone suggested. Yes, that's it. I don't even now know what that word may mean." Then he took a paper and says, "Listen, this is an order from the governor," and he began to read. My eyes grew misty, my brain went round, and I could make nothing out. I only understood that I was said to have told people to burn the house. He finished reading and says, "Well, to what province do you wish to be sent?" I was silent and did not know what to say to him. He again repeats, "To what province?" I stand like an image. "Well then, I will send you to Tula. Do you hear what I say?" "I hear it. And now, Your Honour, can I go straight home?" "Take him and march him off." 2 soldiers were standing there, and they marched me to prison with drawn swords, one in front and the other behind me, as if I were a savage beast. There I sat a fortnight, and then I was brought to Tula under convoy. I was never here before in all my born days. Will you believe me, lads? I've been going about 3 days and had only a pound of bread to eat. I've got quite starved. Work, I see, is scarce in these parts. I've tried to get a job, but no. Begging is a thing I'm not used to, and no one gives anything. May God give you good health, children. He sends me to you. I've eaten and drunk my fill of soup and bread, and here you've collected a store for me. God will send you his kingdom unawares. And one old man began to cross himself and to bow all round, saying, Thank you. But have you had a trial? Someone asked. What trial? No trial at all. They give short trial to the likes of us. Well, and where did they take you next? I asked. What is to be done, Daddy? It's all the same, whether one dies in one's own field or another's. The earth is the earth. Aren't we all in the same bondage? The children will grow up without you. Don't they say, and don't they write in the papers, that there are many thousands in the prisons alone? Some for truth's sake, some for wrongdoing. Some have been hung, some stabbed, some shot. It's like the end of the world. Go on living, Daddy, until your soul goes away of itself. The old man turned his head towards the place whence the voice was preaching to him, and, as if agreeing, he shrugged his shoulders, scratching himself, for the prison had supplied him richly with insects. Daddy, you should go to the baths, somebody remarked, and it would be well to bake your clothes in a hot oven, or those prison lodgers will eat you up. Yes, my lad, it is long since I washed my body. Well, brothers, may God's will be done. My thanks to you. No need, Daddy, no need. Come again some day if you need to. We'll collect some more for you. Thank you, my dears. I may have luck tomorrow. They promised to give me a job on the tram line. And now excuse me, children. I am going. Don't judge me harshly. Where to? The Doss house? No, I slept there last night. God save us from such people as there are there. I'll spend the night at the railway station, and tomorrow, God willing, I'll get a day labourer's job on the tram. I left the cook shop with him, and we took leave of each other. I pressed his hand. Thank you, friend, said he. I have had a rest with you. He took off his cap, crossed himself, made his way towards the railway station, while I went home. Here is a man, thought I, who has to drag on in his old age far from his children. A year is a long time. Will he live to see his children, and what will become of his eldest daughter, of whom he said, May God not let her out of his keeping? Anything may happen. The uncared for meet most easily such as deceive and dishonor them.
For a single word embodies his complex views on morality, forgiveness, and the power of human conscience, as shaped by his later philosophical and religious transformations. In this short story, Tolstoy critiques social conventions and human arrogance, while simultaneously emphasizing Christian principles of humility, repentance, and redemption. The tale centers on the profound consequences of a single utterance, illustrating how even the smallest verbal insult can lead to a complete moral and spiritual unraveling. Through the story's structure and themes, Tolstoy provides a platform for both religious meditation and philosophical reflection on the nature of sin, redemption, and the ethical weight of language. Religious themes in For a Single Word. At the core of Tolstoy's religious philosophy is the Christian idea of moral perfection and the ability of the human soul to strive toward the image of Christ. Tolstoy's deep engagement with Christianity, especially in his later years, reflects his interpretation of the Gospels, particularly the Sermon on the Mount. In For a Single Word, this religious framework becomes apparent as Tolstoy crafts a narrative in which a seemingly minor insult sparks a profound spiritual crisis. The central character's journey can be seen as an embodiment of Christian repentance, underscoring key religious principles such as humility, forgiveness, and reconciliation. The power of words in Christian teachings. In the Bible, Words are often seen as having a powerful, almost creative force, capable of building or destroying. Jesus' teachings in the Gospels emphasize the importance of words, warning against careless speech and encouraging the faithful to speak with love and integrity. This idea is echoed in Matthew 12:36-37. But I tell you that everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. Tolstoy, influenced by this scriptural insight, uses the insult fool in For a Single Word to illustrate the damaging power of thoughtless speech. This insult, though seemingly trivial to the speaker, triggers a deep introspective process in the recipient. The recipient becomes consumed by the gravity of the insult and sets out on a path of revenge. Tolstoy's inclusion of this plot device highlights the biblical teaching that even empty words have the power to corrupt and lead individuals astray from their spiritual path. Sin, repentance, and forgiveness. The moral pivot of the story occurs when the offender realizes the devastating consequences of his casual insult. The insult, though unintentional, catalyzes a series of destructive actions, with repercussions that spiral out of control. This progression is akin to the Christian understanding of sin. Even a minor transgression can separate one from God if left unexamined and unconfessed. Tolstoy's narrative reinforces this concept by portraying the offender as gradually coming to terms with the harm his words have caused. The journey to repentance is central to Christian teachings, and Tolstoy emphasizes its importance in this story. The offender's realization that he has caused deep emotional pain leads him to seek forgiveness, which aligns with the Christian notion of reconciliation with God and fellow human beings. In For a Single Word, the protagonist's path to redemption is achieved not through grand gestures, but through a simple, heartfelt acknowledgement of his wrongdoing and a sincere request for forgiveness. Forgiveness, in Tolstoy's story, is presented as a powerful and transformative act. It is only when the injured party forgives the offender that both characters experience a form of spiritual liberation. This emphasis on forgiveness is rooted in the New Testament, where Jesus encourages his followers to forgive not just once, but 70 times 7 times, Matthew 18:21-22. By presenting forgiveness as an essential resolution, Tolstoy reflects his belief in the healing power of mercy and the Christian doctrine of salvation through love and reconciliation. Philosophical analysis. Beyond its religious implications, For a Single Word also invites a broader philosophical inquiry into the ethical dimensions of human interaction, the nature of language, and the meaning of moral responsibility. Tolstoy's story, though short, encapsulates key questions about how individuals navigate their moral choices, the consequences of those choices, and the existential struggle for meaning in a world rife with misunderstanding and conflict. The ethical weight of language. Philosophers throughout history, from Aristotle to modern linguistic theorists, have debated the nature of language and its moral implications. Aristotle, for instance, viewed rhetoric and communication as central to civic life, with the potential to influence the moral and political landscape. Tolstoy, in his story, aligns with a more existentialist perspective, suggesting that language carries not only the burden of communication, but also the potential to harm and alienate others. The story's pivotal moment occurs when a single, seemingly insignificant word, fool, sparks a cascade of negative consequences. Tolstoy suggests that words are never entirely benign. They have a weight and significance that transcend their surface meaning. This aligns with a broader existentialist concern about the inherent limitations and ambiguities of language. In the same vein, philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche have explored the ways in which language can both reveal and obscure truth, often leading to misunderstanding or alienation between individuals. In For a Single Word, Tolstoy explores how language can both wound and heal. The insult at the beginning of the story creates a rupture between the two characters, but it is through language, specifically an apology and the acceptance of forgiveness, that the relationship is restored. This dual nature of language, as both destructive and redemptive, reflects a deep philosophical concern with how individuals engage with one another in a world shaped by imperfect communication. Free will and moral responsibility. Another key philosophical theme in the story is the question of free will and moral responsibility. The offender in Tolstoy's narrative does not initially recognize the moral weight of his actions. He speaks thoughtlessly, unaware of the potential consequences of his words. However, as the story progresses, he is confronted with the reality that his actions have set in motion a series of events beyond his control. This echoes existentialist themes about the burden of freedom and the responsibility that comes with it. Tolstoy's story illustrates that while individuals may act without full awareness of the consequences, they are nevertheless responsible for the outcomes of their actions. This is a reflection of the Christian belief in free will, where individuals have the capacity to choose between good and evil, but must also bear the moral responsibility for their choices. Tolstoy, influenced by his reading of the Gospels and his own spiritual crisis, presents this responsibility not as a burden, but as an opportunity for moral growth and transformation. Redemption and the human condition. At its core, For a Single Word is a story about redemption, both in the religious sense and in the broader philosophical context of personal transformation. The narrative suggests that even small, seemingly inconsequential actions can have profound effects on the human condition, leading individuals to either spiritual growth or moral decline. Tolstoy, in his later years, became deeply concerned with the possibility of moral perfection and the role of individual effort in achieving it. The process of redemption in Tolstoy's story is not automatic or guaranteed. The offender must first recognize his sin, take responsibility for it, and seek forgiveness. This mirrors the existentialist emphasis on personal responsibility and the possibility of self-overcoming. Philosophers such as Jean-Paul Sartre have explored the idea that individuals are condemned to be free, meaning that they must navigate the complexities of human existence without clear guidelines or guarantees. In For a Single Word, Tolstoy suggests that redemption is possible, but only through a conscious and deliberate effort to align one's actions with moral principles. Conclusion. Leo Tolstoy's For a Single Word is a profound meditation on the religious and philosophical dimensions of human life. Through its exploration of the power of language, the nature of sin and redemption, and the ethical weight of personal responsibility, the story invites readers to reflect on the ways in which even the smallest actions can have far-reaching consequences. Tolstoy's narrative is deeply rooted in Christian theology, particularly the concepts of forgiveness and moral transformation, but it also engages with broader philosophical concerns about free will, language, and the human condition. In both religious and philosophical terms, the story emphasizes the importance of humility, repentance, and the recognition of one's moral obligations toward others. Ultimately, For a Single Word serves as a reminder that even the most seemingly insignificant words and actions carry within them the potential for both harm and healing, reflecting the profound interconnectedness of human life.